Welcome to Conversations with Chuck Bennington. I'm Chuck Bennington, and I don't know it all, and I don't pretend to, but I do know that I love my son, and I want him to have a better, faster, smoother journey through the trials and tribulations of life than I had myself. So here's my documented journey, stories, lessons, and experiences that are really for you, buddy. I love you.
And welcome back to another episode of Conversations with Chuck, with the man himself, Mr.
For
Chuck
me, it
Bennington.
says recording hasn't started.
That's okay. It'll just be on your local end. That's cool.
Now it says recording started.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a lag, but I've got you.
Well,
We're live.
we're off and rolling.
We are off and rolling. How are you, sir, on this Thursday, your time? Thursday?
I'm good. I really, truly am very much so good.
That's good.
Happy human.
Yeah, that's good. And, life's tootling along as it does. And we were just talking before we jumped on and hit record about how this year it seems like time's racing by, but it's just that urgency to get stuff done by the end of the year. So I thought today we would stop for a moment and look backwards. So our episode earlier this week, we talked about, how we plan for the next year, but it's how was 2022 like?
It was a big year. That was a crazy year.
Wins.
I'll be honest, like I have. It's been so much mental chaos and so many different things. I was thinking back. Did Liam break his arm this year or last year? It was this year.
Last year. No, it was last year because we talked about it on Avengers. Yeah.
Jesus, yeah. I'm like displacing, like, I don't know. It's all a big swirly, twirly, whirly mess. It's been a crazy year.
It has. It's just suddenly we're in December and it's like, whoa, how do we get here?
This is the fastest that a year seems to have gone by for me. And kind of what Lisa and I were talking about is a lot of passages of time are metriced off of milestone moments and like significant occurrences, which is why, like, as arduous and slow moving as COVID adventure life 2020 and like parts of 2021 were for a lot of people. And you're like, those were the longest, most boring, stupidest days, but it still kind of just feels like I blinked and a year disappeared. Right, because there weren't big experiences, there weren't milestone moments, there weren't pieces that tapped into a lot of like neurons involved in all of your senses, which is like, that's why those things happen, right? Like when you get in a car accident, it's a sticky memory because every piece of like your sensory input has a whole lot of activity, and then we also attach a lot of significance to it. Anyway, so yeah, like this year has been a lot of busyness and changes. My travel for TGC, growth in Fitfiliate, travel for Fitfiliate, Vanessa, quitting her job, us opening the office, Liam changing schools, family vacation. Was that this year or last year? Costa Rica was
last year. Last year was Costa Rica. Yeah, last year.
The fuck did we do this year?
You did something.
Just worked.
Yeah, just did the things. So, well, let's reflect on that. Like when you look back at the year, what were, either personally as well as, professionally, I guess, what were, and as a family, like what were your big, your big wins for the year that you feel like your big high points?
Liam's new school has been a real high point. That was a difficult thing to navigate. And it's one thing to have like all of your own fears and insecurities about yourself and your own like shortcomings relative to your life, but it's real mindfuck to be like, are we ruining our son? Are we like, are we shitty parents? Are we doing something that like really is disadvantageous? So that was, a weird thing to kind of navigate, but a lot of it is like, trust your gut.
Yeah.
Thin slice things. Trust trust feelings and vibes a whole lot more than logic and reason. Honestly, that seems to be a repeated life lesson. And so, like, new school is awesome. He is thriving there. That's great. And then
Mhm.
obviously, like, the other big thing for the year is the office.
Mhm.
That's no small undertaking. I think, I mean, there's definitely
Oh,
no shortage of
it's
people
huge.
that start businesses and launch businesses, but the scope and scale of the business is definitely like, that's
Mm.
interesting. That's a big step in the right direction. Like, one of the things I was trying to navigate this morning is a daily purchase limit authorization that I have to change so that we can get an order run through for some supplies to be delivered on Monday. Um, and it's like basically an $8,000 like transaction, uh,
Mm.
which is like, it is what it is. And for a lot of
Mm.
people, like, that's nothing. And in the grand scheme of life and business, like,
Mm.
I mean, it's not nothing, but it's not
Yeah, it's
everything.
not.
But like, when you've got things like that happening on like a daily occurrence,
Mm.
it's just, yeah, like, this is for sure consumed the last quarter.
Mm.
October to the end of December has disappeared in like the blink of an eye.
Mm.
A lot of that is just literal fatigue. We pulled like a
Yep.
lot of a lot of very, very, very late nights and early mornings. And so when you're super tired, turns out like memory is not functioning at its best. So like, that's
Yep.
shitty. Like that, as I say it out loud, as I often do when we have these calls, like, I think that's probably been a big piece of where this year has disappeared, was
Mm.
not my best year of like self care. Um,
Mhm.
but if you can consolidate and think about things as like compartmentalized seasons of life to some degree, like, the ends justify the means. And so, like, wouldn't have it any other way.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, it is bizarre to me that I'm like, what even happened this year? What did we do? Where did we go?
Mm. And it's, you know, you talk about, like, dropping behind on some of, your self-care routines and stuff, just out of necessity. But, you know, throughout your life up until this point, you have banked a certain amount of capacity and fitness and wellness that gives you that little gap that you can wriggle room. And you know that once you're not the sort of person that's going to go, well, I'm, probably never going to exercise in the home garage again. It's like, well, no, we will.
Well,
It's
I mean,
just,
we're still doing it. I mean, we've worked
yeah,
out every day this week.
there you go.
And I
Boom.
guess, like, that's, we talk a lot about the idea of like, behaviors to affect and create habits that end up being in support of an identity.
Mm.
And like, so that's nice. That's
Mm.
nice that when life is crazy, wild, unbelievably stressful, my food is still predominantly my food. Like,
Mm.
I might
Yep.
eat a little bit more like crunchy, salty stuff in the evening, but like, it's,
Yep.
a bowl full of like light kettle corn or
Yep.
something, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
we
You're not
might
going
not work
getting a
out
burger.
a ton, but it's
Mm.
that a workout shifts from like, doing like a 15-minute workout to like, hey, maybe today we just do Tabata squats and like get about our business.
Yeah.
That's
But
nice.
fitness was still achieved.
Yeah, it's, dude, that's that's a thing that I wish that somebody would have like curated in a better manner for me earlier in life. And so maybe that's like kind of the jam on this, is like doing the harder work up front to just get to the point of where something is more habitual. Oh, it's so worth it.
Mm.
Like the true financial investing in yourself. Like,
Mm.
yep, it's a bitch, to go through. It's not really a bitch. It's like, that's
Mm.
an easy story. Like, it's really not that hard to go and set up a bunch of like, appropriate investment accounts and auto debits. You could be
Mm.
done with the whole thing. Like, you could go and
In the
open
afternoon.
some, tax advantaged investment situation in like 15 to 20 minutes with like your bank or even another third party, and like link your
Mm.
account, be done in like fucking 20 minutes for
Yep.
the rest of your life. You don't have to think about it again. Like, food and exercise, not so easy on autopilot, but like,
Mm.
that is more effort than just transferring the money once a week at the end of the week.
Mm.
Right? Like that is,
Yeah,
you're like,
that
well,
is.
that's a 30-minute affair of time, energy, and effort doing things I don't know how to do that I haven't done yet.
Mm.
Fair. And it only
Mm.
takes me like 30 seconds to manually transfer the money at the end of the week in my bank account.
Mm.
Fair.
Mm.
So 2 weeks to get to a minute. So what, 60 weeks? So yeah, like, okay. So we would be asking you to expend over a year worth of like the current effort and time that you're expending, like in one consolidated 30-minute block. Like if we look at it
Mm.
really like objectively, you're like, fuck, that's a big ask. That'd be like, let's look at all of the burpees you do in the whole year and let's do them all in a row back to back. But
Yeah.
if you do it and you could be done with burpees for the year and actually get
Yeah.
more benefit from it, might not be a bad decision.
Mm.
Right. And so, like, nutrition, exercise, even if you're looking at like spend a couple of years really getting to make it a piece of your lifestyle, to just
Mm.
really be done with a lot of that decision making and like mental fatigue for the next 50 or 60 years,
Mm.
not a bad deal, might be a worthwhile consideration. And so, like, that's, maybe that, as I say it, is kind of like one of the bigger lessons that like at least is codified out of this year of like, when are the chances that we have to what are the chances that we have in life to exert atypical amounts of effort in order to have things be better for atypical amounts of time on the back end?
Mm. Mm. There would be lots of opportunities if you could, you know, really sit and think about, well, where am I investing time and energy where I could be compressing time, I guess, for want of a better term, and you know, getting it done, and then not having to have that constant stress and thing that sits in your brain taking up bandwidth from other things.
And maybe that is like the biggest thing of like, kind of missing memories and significance and like having kind of a muddled reflection of like if there was a lesson learned through this year, it's that like at some point trying to do everything is the limitation to doing anything.
Mm. Yeah, and it does, because you find that when you're trying to do it all, like, you can't do it all well. You can't do
Yeah.
it all as well as you want. So then it's like, okay, well, what do I compromise and what do I pick and choose then?
Yeah, and like, we officially did shut Gym Gypsy down because that was
Mm.
like, hey, we can't give this the time, energy, and effort that like it needs to do anything worthwhile. And
Mm.
that seems like bad vibey to the universe to be involved in a thing that is just like half-assed and
Mm.
attached to. And that's been, more of my shift out of all the CrossFit gymnastics stuff. I don't know if I'll
Mm.
ever, put the shirt on and teach a seminar again, and I'm okay with that because
Mm.
at this point, I'd rather not travel without my
Mm.
family.
Mm.
Um, Traveling without my family, no bueno. Dislike. So
Mm. And it is, particularly as Liam now starts to get a little bit older, you can actually have, rather than going, okay, how do we make travel work with a little dude? But now he's more interactive. You can actually have experiences with him at different things, and he'll start to be old enough that he can appreciate like the things you're doing, not just, I don't know, I went from point A to point B, and did I play on my screen while I was on a plane or something? You know what I mean? It was like,
now we,
yeah.
Vanessa had a work trip in Dallas pretty recently, and we drove
Mhm.
as a family to do that. And she did her work thing during the day, and me and him went to the zoo. And then
Mhm.
she cut out early the next day. We went to the aquarium. Like that stuff's awesome. And
Mm.
there's a very limited time to do those things in life. And I don't know what our experience will be, but I've seen that the nature of a lot of parent-child relationships changes pretty dramatically around like, 13, 14. And
Mhm.
so, dude, potentially less than a decade left to have like a lot of, smoother, easier, more tightly bonded, connected trips. And,
Mm,
The universe repeats lessons in interesting ways. And it's like, so if we go hard enough in this period of time, if we put that time, energy, effort in now while we can,
mm,
is it enough to cement and bond the relationship in a better way for the rest of all of our lives?
mm. And
Well,
the answer, I think,
hope so.
could be yes.
Could
But
be,
and
or
you
maybe
kn
not. Or maybe like
yeah,
there's other things beyond our control, but like,
yeah,
what's the downside? What's the opportunity cost?
mm. And I think it's, you know in years to come when Liam reflects on those experiences, and now, you know, like when you and I were growing up, to a degree, thankfully, there was no social media or anything like that. Like you know, it was film roll cameras, and if you got 3 photos of yourself when you're a kid, well, yippee, good. I was the eldest, so I was lucky. I've got, like, 2 albums. My sister's got, like, half an album or 1. But, Liam actually has, like, he has this content to look back on, and, you know, the Instagram content and all this sort of stuff that you guys have curated and put there. Like, I know that on your trip to Dallas, Vanessa posted this video where you and Liam were like, she came back and she's like, come back to a messy room, and you and Liam were just crashed on the bed sleeping, and Liam was leaning on your arm or something. And I was like, that is so cool. And like, Liam might not remember that now, but in conversation and after seeing that, it will trigger something. Like, he might not consciously remember it, but he'll come back and go, yeah. Um, and have an understanding of that and go, um, and appreciate those times because there's evidence and data of it. Like, we don't,
Yeah.
time skews our memories, but here's an actual thing. I remember last week I was talking to Colin's little one, Poppy, and she said, "How do you know Henry's name?" Their 19-month-old. I said, "Well, I've known Henry since he was like in mum's belly. Like, I've known him since he was born,
Yeah.
the same as you." I said, "You were really little, remember? You used to go to sleep on my shoulder at the gym." She goes, "Yeah, and I was pretty cute, wasn't I?" I was like, "Yeah, yes, you were." But she loves seeing the photos of, show me more photos of me when I was little, like, scroll through the phone. She goes, "Oh, that's me with you. That's my bear you gave me," which she was little, but she still remembered that. So I think
Yeah.
when they can see it, that's a thing. That's an advantage to now.
Well, and okay, so like this is interesting. This is an interesting reflection to capture, like, in a
Mm,
documented fashion. But I believe, I don't know, all kinds of shit. It's mostly what we talk about. My beliefs, as
yeah.
erroneous as they might be, but I believe that within reason, almost anything can be viewed as a learnable, improvable skill. Like any human trait, task, characteristic that isn't like, fucking
Mm,
whatever, beyond the context of really making sense. So like memory is a skill to a
mm,
degree. Some people innately have better memories, but like you can absolutely improve your quality of memory.
mhm,
And so I make a really deliberate, concerted effort to talk to Liam about his own memories in the hope that he retains more of his childhood.
mm,
Because I think for most of us, especially if we don't have exactly what you're talking about as like, recordings, pictures,
mm,
videos, unless somebody tells you a specific story on a repeated cadence,
mm,
it's not enough, right? Because right now, like your mom, she could tell you a story about your childhood very early on, but if it's the first time
mm,
you've heard the story,
mm,
there's probably a very low likelihood that it will elicit a memory.
mm,
So on a regular basis, I go out of my way to talk to Liam about life memories.
mm,
And it's super cool because like actual evidence it's working on a regular basis now. He's like, "Hey daddy, do you remember when I was 2 years old and X, Y, and Z?"
mm,
So it's cool because it helps me remember more of our lives and significance. And it also, I hope, like helps him retain more of his own childhood.
mm.
Uh, but at least it's cool for me.
Yeah, it's something that you can't, it has to be organic. It has to just evolve. And it's actually funny to, when he looks back on his childhood experiences, because you guys have been so intentional about curating, a life and experience for him, and, being intentional about your time that you spend with him, and making sure that he's not just tagging along, drag from pillar to post. Like, there's, you are taking him with you, and you are also taking time out to spend time just doing what he wants to do, doing some fun activity stuff, it builds that bond over and over and over in those neural pathways, and he just has that better experience because he's just exposed to it more often. And he sees, you
Yeah.
and the way you and Vanessa are and the way you guys do things as a family. He has an understanding of, this is my tribe, this is my team, this is what matters, this is who I do things with.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe that's like a big piece of like the lessons of the year. As a parent, you would certainly hope that it is fairly universal, but it's obviously not. That like the child is kind of the focal point,
Mm,
family unit, and like of the parental units. And I think that it is fair to say that like we've been pretty good about that.
mm,
Uh, but I think this year, a lot of it was trying to look further ahead and think
mm,
about what needs to happen now, and that's kind of what's led to the focus on, well, I mean, getting the office open and focusing on that is like
mm,
and dealing in like events of inevitability for the life that we want. It's like, well, if we want to take these family vacations together that
mm,
aren't interrupted by Vanessa's travel for work, my travel for work, or like it just always fucking super sucks to try to
mm,
like find personal and business into the same trip. Like just both of them
mm,
end up compromised. You don't get the work done that you want. It doesn't feel productive, and like the personal
mm,
stuff is distracted. And it's like we've done. I mean, that's almost all that we've done. We've done so much of that in the last 15 years together. Like
mm.
hundreds of trips that have been like work trips that we try to get some personal stuff out of. And like that just sucks.
Yep.
And so, like if we want to take personal trips that are just personal trips, cool.
Mm,
And if we want to have like both of us the independence and flexibility of our schedule to be like, hey, guess what? Tuesday,
yep.
we're just gonna go to the fucking movies and eat popcorn for breakfast and then like tell the world to fuck off and not, do anything. Like,
Mm,
cool. There's only so many like ways that you can actually make that happen.
mm,
Also getting to a point where it's like there's some degree of existential crisis that does often occur, very rarely that it doesn't, that like in a business as an entity that comes to light, like wanting to have a thing to call your own.
mm,
Like partnership structures can be great if you guys can leverage each other's like strengths and make up for each other's weaknesses, but like there's always a piece of like, not always, but for most of us, there is always a piece of calling to have a thing to like to have and to hold that isn't a shared thing.
mm,
Um, and then also just in the general business sense, like partnerships fiscally for a business, like for the owners, they generally suck.
mm,
Right. To think that like, in an equitable partnership of 50-50, we are effectively cutting the profit in half, which means that
mm,
like to get to the same profit distribution, the business actually has to double.
mm,
Doubling a business is no small ask, but also generally when a business doubles, the margin diminishes. So now you're looking at like, okay, me taking home X amount of dollars in and of itself versus
mm,
us both taking that same amount of money, the business has to be generally like 2.5 times the size.
mm,
And so if you're looking at like competing interests of time, energy, attention, just like fucks to give in life, like, oh, well, that also doesn't really work very well long term for most of us.
mm,
So like that's where I was going with all of that is looking at what is it that we need to establish, focus on, and create now in our lives for me, Vanessa, and Liam, so that the life that we want comes to actually exist instead of be like this ethereal dream that we just talk about. Oh, wouldn't it be
mm.
nice?
It's that, yeah, and getting sucked into the vacuum of, the office and the business stuff. I mean, I know you guys were super intentional, like when you were building out the office, that was a lot of time and effort, and you guys, were out of necessity needing to be there and do that. But I remember distinctly one day when you're like, yeah, we're finishing early today. We're taking Liam. We're going to go and pick up Liam early from school. We're just going to have a family day because, you're aware of the time that you had taken out of the family chunk to do, the build out, but you still were very intentional about, no, we're going to take some of this back now because we can. And you
Yeah.
made time, and the world didn't stop. The practice, didn't not open, and nothing didn't happen on time. But we need to now as a unit step back together and carve out that time. And this is, we're working hard right now, but we can still have this time. It's still important to
Yeah.
us. It's not like, dude, you just got to ride this out for the next 5 or 10 years till we're successful.
Well, and like that's been really nice, is to have learned so many lessons in life and business previously.
Mm.
To like get off to like a solid start, not just in like the fiscal sense, but like yes, in that way as well. But like just to know some of those lessons. You're like, hey, like you're gonna need to budget for some nights and weekends. You're going to need to figure out some communication boundaries. You're going to need to make some decisions in advance about what things are or not fires that need to be put out.
Hmm.
You need to hire more people, because it's not a matter of like if you can afford to hire them, it's that like you can't afford not to, because like it compromises the whole thing, and eventually you need more revenue generation anyway, and eventually you can't do all the things anyway. So like you just got to go ahead and do shit. So that's, maybe that's not like a year in reflection piece, or maybe it is, but it's been nice to have an opportunity to put lessons to use in a better, faster, more productive way with a better end game, right? To have like, 100% of the equity, to have 100% of the profit, to have, as a family, 100% of the decision-making ability. And maybe that probably is one of the biggest lessons of a lifetime, really solidified in the last year, is that like without control there is no freedom.
Well, it's
That
that old
is
cliche, isn't it?
super powerful, and I think it's one of those things that's very easy to hear but very, very simple to have lost on you.
Well, I mean, how many people have had, Jocko's statement tattooed on their arm, discipline equals freedom. But what have they actually, do they really understand what that truly means? And understanding that whole concept, rather than just going, oh, this is something cool. Yeah, I've got to be disciplined to get freedom. No. What is real discipline? And what is the real
Well, and so
freedom?
like interesting construct is like you can build all of the discipline that you want, but it's only limited to the leverage you can exert. So like discipline only within the means of your control, if it doesn't change anything else, like you're still not fucking free. Right? Like
Yeah.
you can make the most, you can be disciplined as fuck with like your food in prison, but you've got no freedom around like, what you eat, how you eat it, when you eat it. Like it's the control that we're after. And that's the abstract, is that like discipline equals freedom. It's like, well, discipline is exerting maximal control. Control is freedom.
Yeah. And I think that's a bit that's easily overlooked. And, even looking at from the context of someone like, Jocko, who developed that through service in the military, it's like that's a very controlled, they are very controlled people. They're very, specific, and everything is measured and very regimented and structured, rather than, no, I was just disciplined today. And then I got to go, like when you're serving in Afghanistan and doing this, you don't have freedom to, well, I was disciplined today and clean my spit polish my shoes and got everything squared away. Now I can go do what I want. No, that's not the context. It is that control. And I think that's a very big missing piece. People hear the first bit and go, oh, that's cool buzzwords. But
Well,
it's
right, because like
what's
how many
underneath it.
people have you seen through, our combined literal fucking lifetimes between the two of us in fitness? It's like, yeah, man, you exert an amazing, amazing amount of effort and discipline over your food and exercise, but you're not free. They're a
Yep.
fucking ball and chain that tie you to a story and identity of like misery and suffering. Not for everybody, not at all, but like I have seen discipline most certainly not equal freedom a million fucking times. And I think like that's the piece of it that's missing is like, well, you have no control over your food. Your food is still controlling you. Despite how disciplined you may be, you are not in control of your food. Your food is in control of you. And this is the coping mechanism that you found to manage it. Same thing with exercise, same thing with money, same thing with relationships. For a ton of people, like exerting discipline and these really structured, regimented pieces and the boundaries, like that is making the most of the control that you do have. It's not wrong. It is like the highest degree of discipline is making the most of that which is within your control. But that still is not remotely close, at least in my brain, at least at this moment in time, December 29th, 2022. I don't think that's fucking freedom at all.
Yeah, it's not. It's an interesting construct to work through, and I mean, as humans, we like comfort, we like ease, so we pick and choose the things that suit us out of a concept or an idea, but leave some of the hard stuff behind sometimes because we're like, oh, I can't wrap my head around that, but I like this concept, so I'm just gonna take the good bits.
Well, and like, cool. Do what you can with what you have where you are. And most people have never even been disciplined with anything their whole fucking life long enough to recognize what they do actually have control over. And if everything to some degree is a learnable and provable skill, well, like, cool, you could have all the freedom in the world, but if you don't know how to actually make decisions consistently, you're fucked.
Yeah.
Right? Like the lion out in the Serengeti, man, he's got a lot of freedom, but like that freedom ain't all it's cracked up to be.
No.
Like you have to, learn how to make better decisions. And so like exerting discipline over something where you only have a limited window to really truly fuck things up because like you have limited control, that probably is a great first step. Like, hey, learn how to manage your relationship with food with like the whole 30. Start by eliminating as much extra mental bandwidth as possible. Actually limit your control. Actually limit your freedom so that you can learn how to exert discipline as a measurement of control before like you give yourself the freedom back.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, this year has been like looking at creating more freedom long term and also like being okay letting go of things that like don't really serve us anymore. I'm very happy to be moving to the other side of like I don't see myself really coaching fitness stuff probably ever again. And I'm really okay with that because like I'll always be in and around the space in some way. Like I will always love it very much, but like I don't need to hang on to that piece of my identity anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. So moving away from more, which we talk about a lot all the time in Fit Affiliate, it's, not so much the physical training and coaching, but more behavioral stuff and bigger picture and more, impactful things rather than someone's wrist position in a muscle up.
Yeah, well, it's like, the wrist position, the muscle up is impactful to them, at that place and time, like in their journey. Like if you can contextualize it as such, like it can be a very cool thing. And especially like in the way that my brain works. So it makes it very easy for me to sell myself on a lot of that. But like, dude, I need to grow up.
Yeah.
Like because that is incongruent with the life that I truly desire. And the life that I truly desire will only be built by a specific version of an identity. And like, so it's not really congruent anymore.
Yeah.
Like the guy whose family lives in like, a concrete, poor, modern construction home designed by his buddy Dominic Furlano, the architect in Florida, like as a one-off custom build and like blah, 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 like go through the whole dream. It's not the guy that argues about thumbs around the bar. It can't be.
No. Yeah. Yeah. But that guy is
not without giving up an enormous amount of control. I could make all kinds of crazy fucking money, like leaning further into that piece of like the CrossFit and fitness world. Like I have the skill set, I could do it. I have no desire to do it because I wouldn't be free anymore. It's like I don't want to talk about that shit endlessly. I'm sick of it. I'm exhausted by it.
Yeah.
There's so many, like, it's, dude, there's plenty of people that want to talk about it all day, every day, and that's awesome because they get more out of it and like they care more about it. And so
Yeah.
that's good. Like, that's the ethical decision, is to, like, step away from the things that no longer, in the words of Marie Kondo, like, spark joy.
Yeah.
Dude, if it doesn't spark joy anymore, but it's going to make somebody else way happier and more fulfilled, and like you actually gain more control over a larger piece of freedom.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a good, and one of the things I looked at when I transitioned out of owning the affiliate was like, I opened the affiliate to change lives, but my reach in that was very limited by the people who were standing in front of me every day. So, 70, 80, 100 people, whatever, who were members. Whereas now, through coaching coaches, which is, what you've done through the gymnastics course and Fit Affiliate and your other projects, is that, I now potentially have, or I can now impact potentially the lives of hundreds more people and their experience in CrossFit by helping, 5 affiliate owners be better and run a better affiliate and change the lives of their members. So I've got, okay, well, there's 140 over here and there's a 200 over here. And you're like, that's much, many more lives that are getting saved because they've got a healthier affiliate. So part of my getting my head around, like, well, I've always wanted to help people and give them the experience that CrossFit gave me in changing lives. It's like, I do it now just at a different level where I can impact more people through touching a smaller amount of lives than having to argue with 100 people about thumbs around the bar or put your
Yeah.
dumbbells away.
It's just like, it's a greater leverage opportunity.
Mm.
Um, and like you can find the same application of the skill set for the same end benefit in a million different like vehicles and opportunities.
Mm.
Like now where I sit presently, it's like helping guide people to making a decision to resolve something that like we have the ability to problem solve for them, that they have the financial means to transact with. It's like, dude,
Mm.
you've fucking hated this thing about your face your whole life up until like this moment, today years
Mm.
old. Like, you could just be on the other side of it.
Mm.
And how much shit over the last 46 years have you done and consumed and bought, and like how many fucking bad decisions have you made to just get around this one problem that like we can resolve
Mm.
here now together?
Yeah,
That's no
here's a
less
path.
significant in a lot of ways. It's like, how many people do you know that went down like the orthorexic rabbit holes of like deep dysfunction with their food and their exercise because they just didn't like some piece of how they looked,
Mm.
often in their face?
Yep.
Still
Yeah.
helping people.
Yeah. And it's, whether it's helping someone get confidence through the first time they get to go upside down, or they can now look in the mirror and be happy with themselves. Like, same outcome. Like,
Yeah,
they
well, I'm like,
walk out of there feeling a shit ton better about themselves and who they are.
especially like when you look at the ability to help contextualize the journey. And like that's so much of like that's where this is a very cool experience for Vanessa and I, because like, what's something that you and I have talked about a ton through Fit Affiliate specific to pricing is that
Mm.
pricing allows people to make an investment in their own transformation of identity.
Mm.
And fucking lo and behold, you wouldn't believe it, like how many girls get a little bit of filler in their lips and it makes them feel confident enough to walk into that scary fucking gym because they feel just that much better about
Mm.
themselves. And
Mm.
maybe like starting with how you look all day, every day is a great place to understand value. It's a great place to understand like making the most of like your life and the time that you have.
Mm.
And so, like, if we have the ability to engage in a transaction for a service that lets somebody feel better all day, every
Mm.
day, regardless of like what life throws at them, fuck, dude, that's better than most of us get with anything our whole
Mm.
life.
Yeah, for sure. And to have that experience in across so many aspects of your life, like that's super fucking cool. And that you're you're still doing the same thing. It's just wearing a different hat.
And then we're gonna start doing like teaching and training stuff. And I'm
Mm,
gonna help people with their consults and help them map client journeys and help them
mm,
understand their own communication. Vanessa's gonna work on building the skill set. And it's like, well, we're right back where we've been, but
mm.
different vehicle, different opportunity, all of the control, all of the profit, all the decision making, all of the family, all in it together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that that's, such a powerful thing that you both now have, and a vehicle that you can control your own destiny with now, rather than, well, we're just going to see what decisions other people make, which may or may not impact your life. It's like, well, we're in the driver's seat now. Where do we want this bus to go, kind of deal. And that's a powerful place to be, and not insignificant for, and I know there's been some stress and, a whole heap of other stuff that's gone on to bring it to reality, but look at the payoff for it. So I
Oh,
think,
dude, it's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be so, 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 so good. It already is,
yeah.
in a lot of ways, but it's good to finally kind of have like the missing piece of the puzzle that
Mm,
helps bridge the gap from the dream into a goal with a
mm,
plan that can be executed on.
yeah.
Um,
I think that's, I think if you're talking about your year in highlights, and I know we've spoken a lot this year in doing these episodes since we started this project, whenever we started it. But I think that seeing the person you've evolved into through this process is definitely a highlight. For
yeah,
the
this
year
is
that you've,
I am in the best place that I've ever been in my life, and a lot of that is like the more recent transitions and clarity.
yeah,
Just like, in a lot of ways, it's time to like grow up and be who you want to be and do the
mm,
things that you want to do and like be okay stepping away from like that which does not serve you in the ways that you need and want to be served in this season.
yeah,
And like we've said fucking bajillion times, like you can always go back.
yes, you
Right,
can.
like
You're never
any
correct.
given day, I could go to fucking any gym in, within driving distance and for sure at least have a coaching job by the end of like hanging out and meeting, but probably like I could run a gym if I wanted to, like by the end of the week.
Yeah,
Like, meh.
yeah,
There's always going to be space in that space because that's a pretty easy space to be better than a whole lot of people in the space, which is
yeah.
an unfortunate reality because that shouldn't be the case.
No, it should be different, but that's what, the other stuff we're working on, like the affiliate and
Yeah, that's
everything
cool.
else.
Like,
It's
man,
about
like,
that space.
Coach like you mean it is like that will be fun because it isn't thumbs around the bar.
No,
It's like
it's giving a
it's
shit.
not thumbs around the bar, but it's like it's all the subtle shit that nobody like thinks to talk about or cares to talk about or feels weird talking about or just doesn't even know is a thing. And that's
Yeah,
cool. I like that very much. And that it's interesting to see those things that are universal pieces of a skill set that is applicable in a training company, an education company, a coaching company, a med spa, in a brick
mm,
and mortar gym. Like, man, there's some pieces of confidence, connection, and communication that like that thread is a strong thread that runs many different directions.
yeah, for sure, and many different applications. So good things ahead for 2023. I'm excited for you. I'm excited for Team Bennington. I'm excited for our little podcast. Like we've
I'm
got,
excited for you to get over to Austin next year.
yes, that'll be that's definitely on the planning for sure. So
Well, we'll
it'd
do
be
it.
cool. All
All
right,
right,
my
lady.
friend,
Thanks
you
for
take
helping
take
me navigate earlier.
no dramas, and I'll see you on the next one.
All right.
See ya.
Thank you so much for listening to another conversation with Chuck Bennington. Hope it was enjoyable for you. Hope there was some value and some benefit in it. Maybe even had a laugh or two. Even though these are primarily for me and Liam, we sure love to help a friend in need because it's a friend indeed. So if there was some piece of it that was good, please feel free to share it with somebody else and pay it forward. If you think what we're doing is rad and you want to support it, please just like, subscribe, share, tell a friend. Appreciate you, dudes.